Good afternoon. Our speaker for today's meeting is Ms. Patrice Matamoros. She's the Executive Race Director from the Pittsburgh Marathon.
Thanks, guys. I have a video. Can you help me with the video switching it over? I have a video that I wanted to show you guys. It's on our Facebook and it's also on our website, but we haven't officially launched it because we're going to launch a new website within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So I wanted to give you guys a look at it to see what you thought.
There's a button, Jared. Hit the laptop. Hey, hold on. Yeah, you go. Yes, audio works now.
What a beautiful morning here in Pittsburgh. I'm telling you, what a great day for racing. Of the 2011 Pittsburgh Marathon.
So that's us, guys. I don't know, has anybody been to the marathon or run in the marathon? Okay, good, good. That's another date to put on your calendars, by the way. May 6th is race day this year. And then if you want to run the 5K, it's May 5th. But we're always looking for volunteers. We had someone volunteer from Slippery Rock last year, Shane Cooper. Do you know Shane? No? So you did. Okay, great. So he volunteered last year, and I think anybody who volunteers, and we have 9 interns this year, it's an overwhelming experience just because of how much planning goes into everything that we do. And in fact, today is a really exciting day for me because every year our registration has increased in numbers. Our first year, we were hoping to bring in 3,500 runners. We brought in 10,500. Second year, we brought in 18,000 runners. Third year, we brought in 20,000 runners, and this year we're hoping to bring in 25,000 runners. And today we have, we're making a press announcement right now. We just sent out a press release, and it'll go up on Twitter and Facebook. We're at 85% sold out. We have over 18,500 runners right now, and that doesn't include our Saturday's events, which will fill up with approximately 4,500 runners. So it looks like we're probably going to make our goal of 25,000 runners this year. And it's hitting the press today, and I think we'll be doing some news stuff later. After this, I'm supposed to meet with Andy Sheehan to talk about it for the 5 o'clock news. So it's a really great place for me to be right now, because when I started the event back in 2008, we made the announcement that we were officially bringing the marathon back, and the marathon had been away from Pittsburgh for 5 years. So some community members kind of drove the decision for the city to authorize us to run in the city and use the city streets. So they brought me in because I was primarily known for my fundraising ability. I came here from Philadelphia, and I've lived in a lot of different places, and I did fundraising for children's and women's events once I had kids, because I wanted to keep my skill set honed and basically up to date. So when I came into Pittsburgh, I took on an event with the Madison Square Garden Rockettes, and was the Rookie of the Year in the city of Pittsburgh for the fundraising that I did with the Rockettes. And it was such a successful program that they then asked me to consult in other cities to do the same thing, to raise money for children in foster care. So that's really kind of how I got involved with the marathon, is they knew that I could raise $1 million in less than a year, and that's what's needed to run the marathon in a city like this. The other thing, though, was that I was a runner in high school. I was a 3-time state champion in the state of Montana, and I still hold national records today for what I did there. I also ran in college. I ran in northern Arizona, was recruited to Florida, and while I was redshirting in Florida, I tore my labrum, and it was a permanent injury, and I've not been able to compete since then. So my passion is for running, my heart's in running, so this makes a lot of sense for me because I'm really passionate about it. But today, I think my main message to you guys is you're all in sports management. You probably haven't had full-time real jobs yet, and my thought and my advice to you is to go for what you're passionate about, and don't let obstacles overcome what you think you want to do versus what people tell you you can't do. A story about me was I was raised in Montana, and I should, by all accounts, not even be here today because I was raised in a house with, my mother was an alcoholic and ended up in jail, and my father was a Vietnam vet, and there was a whole other side of issues there. And I ran to escape all the problems I had at home and ended up running really fast and ran straight out of Montana to Arizona. When I was in Arizona, I basically was on my own. My dad and my mom would not pay for me to go to college, so I had to do it on a full scholarship, and then I was also an academic All-American, so I had scholarships to get me through, and I worked on top of that, and I ran and I trained twice a day, about 100 miles a week. So I traveled all over the country running and using running to get me where I wanted to go and where I wanted to be. And once I lost my scholarship, because of the funding and because of what was going on at the University of Florida, they were under probation with the NCAA, and they were supposed to hold up for 1 year in all of the funding that they did in terms of scholarships. Mine got cut. So I was out on my own to try to follow my dreams and try to get to where I wanted to be. And I couldn't be a runner anymore, which is all I knew, and that was my success, and that's how I really got everywhere I went. So I had to go back to work. So I had to work 3 jobs. I worked as a waitress at a breakfast restaurant. I worked as a hostess in Red Lobster. And then I also worked in an office doing paralegal work because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. So I worked the 3 jobs. I didn't have a car. I didn't have support. I had a friend who let me stay on her couch from high school. And I ended up working to upgrade to a bicycle so I didn't have to walk to work. And then I eventually was able to buy a car when I got hit by a car on my bike and ruined my bike, but I had saved up enough money by that time to get a car. So I had a long journey before I got my final degree, which ended up at Old Dominion University. In the process, I met my husband, who his dream was to become a Navy SEAL. So that's what he did. He went on and became a Navy SEAL, and I continued working my way through school at that point, running here and there, and taking jobs, doing anything I could do that was going to get me ahead in the world. So I finished up my degree at Old Dominion right out of college because I was so hungry and because I wanted to make something of myself, and I was determined to do that. I started entry-level for a division of Ford Motor Company. I started as an entry-level in a management position, making $27,000, and it was also a position that I could go as far as I wanted to go. It was mostly an all-male dominated division that I was in. I was in heavy equipment and industrial equipment. So I did everything I could. I latched onto the very successful salespeople. I went out on sales calls with those people, and I learned what they did and the tricks they used to become successful themselves. When the manager was around, every single thing I had was squared away. I stayed late, I worked weekends, I did whatever I could, so I knew every single part of heavy equipment and what the business was about and where the profits were, and then I started selling. First I was selling with help. I was the inside, and then as I developed my skill set, I was moved outside to meet with clients and to meet with other customers. And because of the success that I had, being a female in a male-dominated industry, when I walked in the door, I could get people's attention because I was a female and because I was attractive. But the minute I opened my mouth, they would then respect what I had to say because they knew what I was talking about. So the vice president, Ford, had come down to visit in our office, and so I did my homework probably a week before he came. And when he came, I asked for a meeting and an appointment with him. And I got a meeting with him, and I gave him 5 different things that I thought we could do to improve our sales ability, and 2 different things we could do organizationally. And of course I did this with my manager support, so I didn't go behind his back. I went through the proper chain to do it. The vice president was impressed, and he moved me into a regional position, and I handled all the regional sales for a division of Ford, which included all the East Coast. I then, because of what I developed with industrial accounts, I worked on mega accounts of $500,000, $1 million, $2 million. I was then invited to be part of a big team for General Motors. We pitched to $50 million accounts. It required a team of several of us, accountants and sales and strategists, and trying to figure out what we could do to get this $50 million accounts. And we came up with a brilliant idea, got the accounts, and then from there I worked nationally and internationally with unions, with General Motors, and then Ford, and then Procter & Gamble. So I would meet with all of the unions, CIO, AFL, and again, I was in a male-dominated industry, so I had a lot to prove and a lot to live up to, and I did, and essentially then helped build and grow some of the divisions in the East Coast, as well as handle $50 million accounts. Then I had 3 kids, couldn't work and take care of my kids because I didn't want somebody else raising my kids. So that's when I got involved with nonprofits and fundraising, so I could use that sales experience, because sales is where you make a ton of money. I was the breadwinner between my husband and I. Navy SEALs didn't make as much money as I did, so I had a penthouse in Bethesda, Maryland. I had a Land Cruiser, and I traveled all over whenever I wanted, all over the world, and did whatever. So it was a really nice life, but it was also really stressful too, but it set me up for this position today. So I guess that my biggest thought and takeaway is that I had so many challenges. I could have stayed in Montana and could have succumbed to my environment and could have listened to the people who said I would fail and that I didn't have what it took. I could have done all of those things. I could have made excuses for why I couldn't do what I wanted to do, but I didn't make those excuses. And most successful people today, you can see that as a common trait. They don't make those excuses either. So whatever your goals are, whatever your thoughts are for your future, I say dive in, go get them, and give every single thing you've got to it until you figure out this wasn't really what you thought or wasn't your passion. Because it does take a while to find your passion. Some people are really lucky and find it like that. It took me 20 to 25 years to get this, and this truly is my passion. I'm really excited about this. When we started with the marathon, there was no money. It was me and my own laptop, my own pens and pencils, and creating my own business cards, because there were no sponsorship deals at that time. But because I knew what my ability was, and people had faith in me, and I went out, I put things on my credit card to fund the marathon for the first 4 months. I worked relentlessly for the 4 months. I got into every major corporate headquarters in Pittsburgh. Dick's Sporting Goods corporate headquarters is here. GNC corporate headquarters is here. Giant Eagle, PNC, and I went after them as sponsors. And for first year, we were hoping to get 3,500. Well, 3,500 in sponsorship you know, your reach is 3,500 people. That doesn't really warrant a big time sponsorship like 100,000, 50,000. So what I did is I came in on a very low level because I knew I would outperform in the delivery of what I was going to deliver for this experience. So I came in, one sponsor for instance, came in at $2,500. $2,500 today through the value that we've built through what we do, that sponsors over $20,000 today. So it just kind of shows you in terms of sales, you can go where you want to go, you can make it what you want to make it, but if you're not delivering value or giving back, you're not going to get the sale. So the thought is to get the sale and keep the sale by developing good relationships, by offering value, overpromise, or you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, you want to underpromise and overdeliver. So it's been really exciting what we've done here, because going from $0 on my credit card to today a $2.6 million organization. So, and we have those title sponsors and presenting sponsors that are corporate giants. We have Dick's Sporting Goods just signed a 5-year deal with us with a 3-year renewable and a 2-year renewable. It's a very big sponsorship. We have UPMC Health, which is also a very big sponsorship there in the half marathon. And we have also GNC, Giant Eagle, and a number of others. The other multinational or global sponsor that we signed this year, we had Nike our first 3 years. Nike decided to go in a different direction for their consumer marketing, so they're not so much event-based, so they dropped a bunch of events. Ours was one of them, but we brought on ASICS instead, and we've had a great relationship with ASICS. So we're really excited about that relationship. In fact, they just sent me this as a present because they want us wearing their stuff everywhere I go. So it's good. In terms of bottom line for me, all I think about and all I talk about in our meetings is I'm very focused on goals and goal setting, and the only thing that matters to me are runners and sponsors, because without runners and sponsors, this event won't stay. We have enormous bills. A lot of people say $2.6 million. Where does all that money go? We raise $1.2 million for charity. So we have 40 different key charities that we partner with that raise money through this event, and $1.2 million goes to charity. The other thing in terms of expenses, where the money goes, giant expenses. The city, I pay $250,000 to run this race in the city. I shut roads down. I have to buy police officers, parking lots. I have to pay churches sometimes and give grants to the community, give kids money to come out and cheer on the course. So $250,000 for city. When you look at the shirts, we're talking a massive order. We're not talking 500 shirts. We're talking this year 29,000 shirts. 29,000 shirts times anything is a big number. So, you know, if you look at that, that's another huge expense, over $250,000. So there's $500,000 just like that. And then you've got an expense of rent. And our first, let's see, first 3 years, we didn't pay for rent. I was able to negotiate free rent in exchange for sponsorship. So what happens is we get to move into a place, we don't have to pay rent, but when the place rents your space, then you have to move. That's the downside of getting it for free. Free always comes at a charge. So then we have to move from one space to another space, and we've moved 5 times in 4 years. Now we're in a permanent space, and we are paying for our rent because we don't want to move again. And we did a multi-year agreement. So it's a big challenge to plan this too in terms of communication. That's the most important thing you guys should be learning in school, is communicating. Communication is absolutely essential to any position that you're in, whether it be managing and directing races or organizations, or you're a doctor or you're an engineer, or at a very basic level you're a customer service person or a coffee person. You have to know how to communicate effectively and properly with people. Communication is a huge part of my job, because what's going to happen today when I get finished here is I will have a lot of phone calls from reporters, and they're going to say, where are your numbers? And I'm going to say, our numbers, we're looking at 85% sellout. I'm not giving them our numbers because our numbers, then they want it breakdown by race. And I have to juggle a whole host of things, and those numbers change on a daily basis. And then there's also things that are built in for me in numbers, are like attrition. How many runners sign up for this event, and then they don't show up because of some injuries or another thing came up or whatever. There's about 18 to 22% of my runners won't even show up at the start line. That's a big number too. If you take 20,000 on race day times 22, and you've got a big chunk there. So those numbers are numbers that I work with, that I don't involve the city with, that I don't involve our media with, because then you have to explain how you do this math, and it's, so you just say, this is what I have on race day. And you take into account your attrition, and I'm really conservative. So we won't give that information out. We won't give other, there's certain other pieces of information we won't give out. So we have to communicate effectively to our runners, because for almost 7 months now, runners have been registering for this race. 18,000 runners registered for this race, not knowing what the start line was, not knowing what the course was, or the finish line. Now, this course is out on this website today. Guess what kind of phone calls I'm going to get? Churches, because it's Sunday, and I impact 60 churches on the course. So I have to be proactively communicating with the churches about how we're going to get their people to church. And it just so happens the economics of the church are the first Sunday of the month are when people get their checks. So that's when they tithe. That's when they get their money. So churches experience a loss of revenue because people don't go to church that first Sunday. And if they miss them, those contributions don't always come in after that first Sunday. So that's another whole set of issues. But those are just they just are the cost of doing business. But then you have emergency management. Year 2, we had a bomb scare at the finish line. It was a microwave, and they thought, it was 2 days before the Times Square bomb. Microwaves are used to house bomb devices, which I didn't know. So we had to it was at the finish line. And so we had to, by the time I got to the finish line, I was in the pace car that day and a half. By the time I got there, it was already sectioned off, bomb squad was there, and we had to redirect all our runners to a different finish line. And it was really crazy, but what it did do was we were actually in the Drudge Report that night, and we had news on CBS, ABC, CNN. We hit all of the news media, and one of the really great things that happened was they said we handled it well. And we got really lucky, and a lot of things fell in place that day, but it was really positively reported, even though it was a bomb. But it made us focus on, now at the marathon, I have to have a bomb squad. I have to have dogs that they're bomb sniffing dogs at the start line, at the finish line. I have to do sweeps of the start line, finish line. I have to be on the phone with Homeland Security all week. I have to be on with emergency management. I have to be tied in a direct line to the mayor all week and on race day. The mayor's press secretary, I have to be online with her that entire weekend. I have fire. What if there's fire people, and on race day we call it's the Emergency Operating Center. So think like a CIS, you see CIS and you see all the people in the different departments. We have the bomb squad, we have police, we have fire, we have Homeland Security, we have CIS, we have a whole bunch of agencies. Even 911 operators are stationed there because of the calls that come in. So I have to coordinate all those efforts and all those different people in one room, and it gets crazy because you can think about all of the different things that happen in 26 miles of a city. What happens if there's a car chase on the course? What do I do? How fast do I have to react to that? Instantly. Can it shut us down? Absolutely. Could it hurt somebody? Yes. So I have to work with a very small set of people that have a task force that we make decisions like that. We also had last year, which didn't get out really. It was published, or it was publicized a little. We had a guy with a gun on the course coming in. It was in the Homewood area. A guy was running with a gun on our course, and shooting. So we were able to get rid of that and get rid of that situation without any incident, without anybody knowing. It was a blip in the news. That's it, because it was a non-issue. So I have to really be squared away in how I think about things, and we practice different scenarios. What happens if, you know, a guy falls down and dies, and you know he dies, and the media comes and says, what happened? What, you know, what do you do? How do you handle that? What happens if, you know, something happens, there's a sinkhole, and your course that you're running that day is gone? What do you do? So there are a lot of different things that we have to think about and we have to plan for, and then there's the unexpected. My biggest worry, last year, we decided, because a year before we did event cancellation insurance, and a board member said, well, let's just get anti-terrorism as an additional rider. And at the time I was like, oh, that's never going to happen. Well, but of course I would never, you know, I'd always err on the side of caution. It was an extra $3,000, so I was like, okay, no problem, we'll add it to it. Well, guess what? 1 week before the marathon, Osama bin Laden was shot, or was killed. So then, what's the media calling me about? Hey, what do you think about a terrorist threat for the marathon? Because, you know, the State Department's putting out warnings, Homeland Security's elevated the threat level. You're a giant event in this city. What do you think your level of risk is? So then you get those kind of calls, and, you know, with the press, you kind of have to sometimes go over things. So I just said 100% sure that's not going to happen here. But it sure made me feel good that I already had an anti-terrorist rider in my insurance policy in the event that did happen. And then I also had an effective plan with the bomb squad and police, and we did step up security, and we brought military in to help us. So there's just, if you think, here's kind of what my job is, a summation of. 25,000 people is the size of a city usually, in a tiny city, right? So what we have to do is we have to manage that city for one day. We have to have the proper fire, we have to have the proper, you know, EMS, we have to have every single agency there. And to manage that city of 25,000, we have to have 3,500 volunteers help us get those people across the course throughout the day. So it's a huge management job, it's a huge communication job, and it's a huge undertaking to make sure you're doing what you need to do, and there's somewhere you're missing a detail, and you're just hoping that it doesn't, you know, hurt you in any way. Because planning an event this size with this many people, it's a wild card. So in terms of what we do with people from sports management programs, we have right now, we started with just me, and then I added 3 people part-time, and then, but now we have 9 full-time people, and of the 9, I have 5 people full-time hired in positions with us that were interns with us. So it's a nice way to step into the job. It's a nice way for us to test people out and check, what do they have? Do they have what it takes? Because you're going to work more than what other interns are working. On race weekend, you're not going to sleep. And on race day, you're going to be fried, and after race day, you're fried. But it kind of shows us, what does somebody have in them? Can they do it? Can they hack it? So it's really good for us to really try somebody out, and we've done that successfully. And I was just talking, and we have 9 interns now interning with us. And I was just talking to everybody before in terms of, you know, decision-making ability at their level and what they can and can't do, because that's also a really important part of what I do, is trying to manage the decisions other people are making and make sure that they're stepping up in terms of management, because it's kind of up or out. If you're not progressing, it's more or less, you know, we're really lean and tight, and they keep doing it. And one thing I think that's different with your generation than my generation was, you know, when I started, I did everything, worked like a dog, hours, and really was respectful to my bosses, and, you know, only spoke when they were speaking to me. Or today, it seems what's great is you guys come in and you have great ideas. You're great with technology, and I love all the interns and all our younger staff because they come up with the best things. They're in tune with social media. They know what's hot. They know what's not. They help me make decisions that keep us on the cutting edge. So I love working with everybody in this generation. I'd say the downside of working with your generation is that we call you guys poof managers. You work for a year and you think you should be a director. Poof. That's one of the downsides of this generation. Not everybody's like that, but that would just be the generation type. But you guys today are so much smarter, savvier, and you have such great ideas. So you're a real asset to an organization like me. And anytime I get an opportunity to have an intern, I'm really, can always usually find a place. Or if you guys want to volunteer race weekend, to check it out, to see what it is, and if you find an area that maybe you're not into event management or to races, but you're really interested in security, or you're really interested in like elite runners and how they're treated, or VIPs on race day are treated a whole different way. I mean, it's a really great way for you to try something out that you're thinking about doing. So if you ever want to volunteer with us, I have cards. If you ever want to intern with us, just let me know. It is a drive. It's an hour and a half, I think. But there are things for race weekend that we could do condensed and post-race. So does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
On a size, like scale size, how do you compare to like the Boston or New York Marathon?
In terms of size, it's Boston Marathon and New York Marathon are only the marathon. And New York is 37,000 and Boston's about 35,000 in just the marathon. So if you're comparing marathons to marathons, we're tiny, they're giant. But scope of event and size of event, 25,000, 35, and 45. So we're comparable to other marathons of that size. We just have different offerings amongst it. And in order, we had one of our executives from Dick's has said, you know, the goal is to be a top 5 marathon. And I'm like, oh my gosh, can't somebody watch what he says, because that's like a Boston and a New York, and we're at 5,000 runners in the marathon. And everybody in the industry was laughing at me and saying, your executive said top 5, and that's only if, you know, Boston has nuclear fallout, LA has nuclear fallout, you know, New York, and they were laughing at us. And I was at first like, oh man, you know, because we try to control what messaging goes out. But in the end, it really benefited me, because when I went to a city meeting with all of the different agencies, they were really proud of the fact that we were going to be a top 5 marathon. They didn't know what that included, and they didn't know what that involved, but that guy, who was an executive, said we were going to be top 5, so they treated me differently. Because they're like, well, yeah, if you want to be top 5, then we've got to do X, Y, Z. So it was an interesting way to look at that PR that I thought could be negative, but it wasn't. It was a really positive for us in the city. In the industry, they still joke with me, but in the city, it's not. And then I just got back last weekend. I was at the Olympic trials. I was selected for the media team with the NBC. So I was in Houston, and I was responsible for the tracking of the top 5 athletes, and then stories. So I did the interviews that were then submitted to NBC, CBS, and all of the different sports networks. So it was a really great opportunity for me to be part of that, because number one, again, you're always trying to evolve your skill set, add to your skill set. You always have to look professionally. What can you do to make yourself even more marketable? And how can you take it to the next level? I wasn't paid for that position. I worked like a dog the whole weekend. I didn't get any sleep. But in the end, it was a really great experience, because I added something else to my skill set, something else that one day I can put that on a resume. Yeah, I was on the media team for the Olympic trials, and I escorted #1 male, and he and I, you know, I was in charge of him for a night. So it was a great thing to be able to put on, you know, it's a great thing to be able to do something like that. And that's the other thing we do, is we travel to all the other marathons, and I'll go to New York and I'll work the start, or I'll go to Chicago and work their media room. So it's just all about picking up the best from the best. And I think that's a really valuable lesson too. You go to the best and you learn what made them the best, and then you emulate those good things. Other questions? Yeah.
When securing a sponsorship, what's your biggest tip for
The
thing you
biggest,
focus on the most?
I focus on developing a commonality with a person when I walk in a room. And this is something I learned at Ford. When you walk into the room of a potential person or sale, the first thing you do is you scan that room. You Google that person before you go in. You know about their company. You know about that person as much as you can know. And you say, oh, he graduated from Slippery Rock. Oh, I'm going to Slippery Rock. There's a commonality. You have to establish a commonality because it's a very beginning step of developing a relationship. Why do people like you? Because you're developing commonalities. They're not, and you're letting them talk. That's the other thing, is so many people come in with their pitch and they just blast in a room and sit down and they just think, they'll give a 15-minute dissertation on this is what they're selling and this is why they're selling it and this is how much it costs. But they don't know one thing about that guy sitting there. They don't know one thing about what that guy might want from you. So I'd say your job is to develop a commonality. Look at the walls and see what diplomas they have. You know, did they go to a school that you have a favorite team at that school? Did they go to a school in a state you love or been there? Do they have on their desk they were the sports person of the year? What do they have that you can identify with and you can show that you're paying attention and you're drawing them in? And then asking them, what are you looking for in XYZ? And letting them lead you. And then a lot of times if you can just ask a question, let them talk. Get as much as you can, and when they're completely finished, as they're talking, you're going to say, well, I'm going to take that off. I'm not going to pitch that. I'm not going to pitch that. So you're really pitching what you want to pitch. That's what I'd say is the biggest thing. Anybody else? Yeah?
Does it affect your marathon that other marathons are going on at the same time? Like I know the Avon Walk is the same weekend as the Pittsburgh Marathon.
Yeah, you know what? We're the same weekend as the Cincinnati Flying Pig Marathon, and neither of us have been impacted by each other, which is, but there's another dynamic going on in running too. Running is at an all-time high. There are more than over 500,000 marathon finishers, so we're all competing for this market. If you think Chicago, New York, and all of the biggies take over to, a third of those, it leaves 500 other marathons vying for the other marathoners. So at some level, there's a breaking point of an event offering things. We go and offer a lot of, we offer ASICS gender-specific shirts, which is what people want. We offer a really great medal. We hope to differentiate ourselves on what we give back and what our course is about. We have 100 bands. An intern start out with bands. We have over 100 bands and cheerathoners on our course. That's one of the top 3 things that are most important to our marathoners, are having that course activation. So we do compete, but we don't compete, and right now we're not being impacted. But I'd see as we become, as our runners become more sophisticated and the market becomes more sophisticated, we've got to step up and meet that sophistication. And that's what we're working on. So, and that's what we always work on. Yes?
Do you find it difficult to attract volunteers? Because I know some organizations like the Army 10 Miler or the Marine Corps Marathon, a lot of times they give out the same kind of race packets and shirts that you would give to your racers. They also give those out to volunteers to kind of attract some people to help them out. Do you find yourself needing to do the same things?
Yeah, and if we don't have volunteers, we're going to fail. So we have, from year 1 to year 4 now, have stepped up our volunteer program quite a bit. We offer shirts, a $10 gift card to Dick's Sporting Goods. We're trying to get bags. We still don't have bags, but we offer lunches to every volunteer that comes in and works during a lunch shift or dinner, if they're doing a dinner shift. We reimburse them for parking or give them a voucher. And we also invite them to a post-race party. We buy them Pirates tickets. Every volunteer gets a pirate ticket. And a barbecue. We do a big event down on the North Shore. So, and this is another thing that we just did. I was able to connect with a very successful business person in Pittsburgh. And so our event in the city, I'm always pitching our event to the city and to the mayor, telling them how good it is so that we get preferential treatment, and I'm just trying to get what I can for the race. Well, I ran into a big businessman. I asked him to be on our board of directors. He couldn't do it. And so I said, well, I want you to be on the board of advisors because I really needed him because he's literally a guy who can pick up the phone and give me money. Or he can pick up the phone and get me the mayor. Or he can pick up the phone and get whoever, the governor, because he's that connected. And so I put him on as the head of our board of advisors. And he said he was going to fill those seats for me. And I was like, great, thanks so much. I want people like you on there. He's like, oh, you'll be happy. I got Art Rooney, Mike Tomlin, Dixon, Morehouse, and Coonley for your board of advisors. So I was like, happy. So, but I can't call them and ask them for anything. So I'm just figuring out what that relationship looks like. But what it does is it elevates our event to Steelers, Pirates level, Penguins level. And Frank Cooley and I have a friendly, a relationship, funny relationship, because he wants to do baseball game. The North Shore people, I call it their kingdom, because they control who comes in their kingdom and who comes out of their kingdom, and I'm always going back and forth with them. And Coonley was supposed to get an away game, got a home game this year. So I called him up and I told him I'm putting him in the marathon and I'm going to publicize it. So as a payback. So let everybody know Cooley's running the marathon, and he's like, don't you do that. So you can develop nice relationships with people who, it's always about networking and creating nice relationships with people. Yes?
What do you look for when you are selecting interns, practicums, and volunteers? More specifically?
Yeah, what I'm looking for is a person who's hungry, who's not hungry like you need to eat, but hungry that you're willing to work for what you're willing to work to get where you need to go. I'm looking for somebody who has eye contact, somebody who is confident in how they come across, and who is able to speak properly. And believe it or not, we get a lot of people who use a lot of slang or don't complete sentences. And I'm looking for somebody, how they look. Are they going to represent this organization in the way that I want it or represent it? And can they talk so that when they're talking to a runner or a sponsor, it's somebody I feel comfortable putting them in front of? And I look for, the different types of antics in interviews. It's always funny because I've interviewed so many people throughout my career, and it's interesting the different little antics and tics that people develop just in interviews that they don't have otherwise. So I think you really want to control what you do with your hands. You want to control your eye contact. I've had interviews where they just look down, or if there are two of us in the room because we're both making that decision on that person, they'll only look at me, and they won't look at her or him, or they only look at them and not me. And so it's all about those. Body language is so important in an interview, and how you come across is so important. And what people are looking for is who's going to work really well like a dog for me so that I can get this job done, and is going to do the right job. Because I want to be able to turn a piece of this marathon over to somebody, right? And it's a piece, and our interns have real jobs. And if they drop their piece, they mess up part of the marathon. So there's real accountability for interns in our organization. But our interns, what I'd like to do is, our interns then coming from us into a Dix or an A6 or a GNC or a Giant Eagle, they know what they've done with us, and they know what type of work we expect, and so they would probably get hired over somebody else just because they'll have produced real work. You will have something to show someone. I did this. So it's just, that's what I'm looking for. Who can take that piece of work for me and do it? And if I have any doubts in that interview that you can't do that for me, that's it. So, and questions. Ask a lot of questions. And know what you're talking about when you come in about the marathon. I have so many people who come in and they don't know when the marathon is. They never looked at our website, and they knew somebody who ran marathon that was 3 miles one time. And it's like, the marathon is not 3 miles. The marathon's 46.2, but they don't know that. So it's just educate yourself on the basics of who you're talking to in the interview. Google them, Facebook them, find out what you can about them without seeming like you're a stalker in the interview. Oh, so I saw you were trying to figure out what you're cooking for dinner last night or whatever. And that's the other part. We're going to start ramping up. If you go to our Facebook page today, you can see what runners are saying because the release will go out, our social media will go out. I just brought in a new social media person. And then we have an intern, a guy who started year 1 as an intern who now is in a bigger position. He actually has his own office, guys. 2 years out of college, I gave him his own office. And he actually brought money to the table. And that's what made me go, that's a no-brainer, I'll hire the guy. Because he's bringing money in to support himself. And he's actually making more money than you guys will make in your first 5 years. So, and it's because he's incented properly. So, but he had to work for 4 years, like a slave. So, anybody else? Yes?
What's the time frame you're looking for interns? And you look for them year-round, or?
Yeah, we have, year-round would be great. Summer, because that's a lot of when we do our planning and kind of coordinating for the following year, there's always work that we can do. It's not as busy in the summer, but there are little projects you can do, and we just started this running club this year, because the other goal for me is, okay, so we have to bring in $2.6 million. How can I do it working smarter, not harder? Because that's my big philosophy too, is you don't stay at work 7 to 10 at night for just appearances. You better be doing something. If you, my thought is, I give people a lot of leeway, and I always say, if it takes you 10 hours to do this job right, or if it takes you 6 hours to do this job right, it's up to you, you know. And so people don't necessarily have to work really long hours to get the credit. It's the job that they provide, the job they produce at the end. I always look at the bottom line. That's all I look at. So we decided, based on working hard, smarter, not harder, what's the easiest thing we can do to bring in extra revenue this year to help meet our goal? And we decided to start a running club. And then we decided that we would have the community volunteer to run this running club so we didn't have to. And that's been, you know, it's been a challenge to get all of it going, but I think we're in a position where we are there. But we have over 700 paid members at $35 a member. So do the math. That's pretty good for really not doing a lot. And I'd really kind of like to put interns in charge of that, and I did this today. If they can manage training runs for me, it's an opportunity for me to see what their management style is like and what their skill set is like. And if they can run the little tiny projects, I can give them a bigger project and then a bigger project until their management. So that's kind of what I look at. And so a summer internship would be great. And we'll do that. So, do we have anything else? I have. Oh, you know what? I have an intern video. You gotta watch this video. This intern who worked with us last year, he created a video at. You'll see. It's funny. Okay. I think it's loading now, but this is a guy, his name's Max, and he came to us and wanted to do something, and we plugged him in to help our elite, working with our elite runners and PR last year. And we need a lot of help in PR all the time, too. I don't know if it's going to show. Is it blocked? Okay. Okay, never mind. Can't get it. So thanks, guys, and achieve what you want to do.